The mainstay of cancer treatment, in terms of the pharmacology, has been and continues to be cytotoxic drugs, cell-killing drugs, literally. And these have been developed and refined over the years. There are now hundreds of different cytotoxic drugs which are used in various different cancers, and picking which one to use is a very specialist field, so we're not going to go there. We're just going to talk about them as a large group. We'll see one or two names of individual agents, but not many. Their job is to kill cells. If they were fulfilling our ideal of chemotherapy, which is to target and only kill cancer cells, then that would be great. But they don't. They indiscriminately kill all cells that are dividing. And the reason that they kill cells that are dividing is because all of them act by disrupting the synthesis of DNA, or the process of copying DNA, or the process of the cell actually dividing. So they all target some process that happens during cell division. And there's many different points at which they actually act, but essentially they're all doing that same thing. They kill the cell by disrupting its genetic material at the time when the genetic material has been copied and manipulated, i.e. during cell division. They're not selective though. They will kill all dividing cells, including your healthy dividing cells, which is why when people undergo cancer chemotherapy, the side effects that they get, and they are serious side effects, are around their normal healthy tissue cells, which are most rapidly dividing. So epithelial cells, for example, are killed, giving you effects on the gastrointestinal tract. The cells of the hair follicles, which are rapidly dividing, are killed. People lose their hair. The bone marrow cells, which are producing your red and white blood cells, are killed because they're rapidly dividing, so you get bone marrow suppression, immunosuppression as a result. And over the years, although the treatments have been refined in many ways to try to reduce that collateral damage on healthy cells, we know it still happens. There's no doubt about that. Just briefly then, we're going to look at a couple of the agents that are cytotoxic. You've seen this diagram before. Folic acid is part of those metabolic steps that lead to the production of DNA. And the reason I'm showing it you here is because I'm just giving you a brief idea of at what point some of these cytotoxic agents work. So we have a bunch of cytotoxic agents which are known as the antimetabolites or antifolates, an example of which is methotrexate. And the methotrexate is a drug we've seen before. We saw it in treatment of rheumatoid arthritis. And these act by blocking the metabolism of folic acid so that the production of nucleotides and therefore DNA doesn't go ahead, or it goes ahead abnormally. So that's where those particular cytotoxic drugs act, and methotrexate is one of them. Now that's a name that you should remember anyway because you've seen it before, so remember methotrexate as an antifolate cytotoxic agent. There's also a whole group of agents, and there's dozens of individual agents, known as alkylating agents. An example of that would be cyclophosphamide. For this I would just remember alkylating agents as a name and remember what they do. I don't think there's any merit particularly in you learning any individual agents within this group. What they do is mess up the DNA by adding an alkyl group to it. So here you've got your DNA, you've got your base pairs, your double strand there. They insert a great blobby alkyl group into the middle of the DNA, which makes it completely abnormal. So they cause cell death as a result of this gross disruption to the genetic material. So that's the alkylating agents. They literally shove an extra chemical group onto a particular base within the DNA strands. And then finally there's also a set of cytotoxics that act further down at the actual act of cell division, where the cell's about to divide and all the chromosomes are lined up there on the middle, and then they pull apart and travel along the spindle to either end of the cell, and then the cell can split into two new cells. The cytotoxics that act at this stage are mitotic inhibitors or spindle poisons. They mess up the tubules that make up the spindle here, so the spindle doesn't form properly, so the chromosomes don't get separated and the whole thing messes up at this point. So These are all cytotoxic agents. They're all acting at some point along the cell division pathway to deform the genetic material in some way and therefore cause the death of the cells. There are more groups than this, but I'm just showing you these three groups. These ones here, the mitotic inhibitors, include the taxanes and the vinca alkaloids, both of which are naturally occurring compounds. The taxanes, these are drugs like paclitaxel, and the vinca alkaloids are things like vincristine and vinblastine. Taxanes are derived from the yew tree, and the vinca alkaloids derived from the periwinkle plant. So these are naturally occurring poisons. That's all that we're going to say for cytotoxic agents. There is lots more that could be said, but I think if you get a sense of what they're doing, rather than trying to learn lots and lots of drug names, then that will be good.